Don't burn yourself out, guys. Depending on your religious or personal views, you only have one life. I'm coming back as a tree, so fight me.
Adia asked about mental health boundaries at work and then with friends and family.
Ooh, okay. Good question. So,
So I don't know if she
my
means like establishing boundaries or like what your boundaries are personally or what, but just boundaries.
so boundaries overall are super important. And if you guys don't have boundaries, I highly encourage that you work on putting them up. And I know that's a harder thing for some people to do because I think our generation was raised to be yes people. Um, I know that I almost get like an odd satisfaction out of always saying yes and like being the helpful one. And I don't know if that's like an odd um subversive like mental kink of being like thank you or oh you did so good. Like the idea of praise excites me, especially in a workplace. But the biggest thing that you can do for yourself is learning that it's okay to say no and for people to recognize that you are more than just like the one thing as far as like your career or even your private life is concerned. Um, the best thing I ever did for myself um, was establishing that my work stays at work and that I have a separate time, even outside of like being home, that's separate of chores and even conversational pieces. Like, I love coming home and knowing that I have like a brief moment or like an hour or two where like I almost call it like a wind down period before I reacclimate into at home social Tim. So I always make sure that like I come home, I hop on a video game, even if it's just like Animal Crossing. I just need like a good wind down period. That's definitely my time before I even consider like a household chore or think about like what my home place responsibilities are. Because otherwise then life is all just work. And that's how like you don't burn yourself out, guys. Depending on your religious or personal views, you only have one life. I'm coming back as a tree, so fight me. But don't just spend it all grinding. Like we're we're more than that. We're more than our careers, and we're more than the chores that define our sim lives. Like, have
Our
fun.
sim lives.
um, no, but yeah, definitely. Establishing that you can say no is the first boundary that you can ever set, and it's almost cathartic telling somebody no, especially when they are so used to you giving everything. Um, but I also really love turning things around on people because I often find, at least in my family, we like to give advice when advice wasn't asked for. Um, so I always like turning things around and being like, well, how does this help me? Because sometimes people just like to spew things unnecessarily. Um, so if you're able to turn it around and make it to be a constructive conversation rather than like what I like to call hostage conversations, then at least you're getting something out of it. Um, so that's one mental health tip that I love. Make it somehow to where it comes back on you to be helpful, so it's not like you're stuck there. It's a Rick and Morty reference too. If you watch Rick and Morty, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, I've
Do you
watched the
remember that one
first
where
I think I watched the first
the
two seasons and then season 3 I
yeah
kind of didn't have access to it really. It was
the
harder for me
dad
to
was
watch
having a conversation with his daughter and she goes, wow, I really feel like this conversation held me hostage, and she goes, what
it.
do you mean? She's like, you're just asking me things that aren't really relevant. Huge. That was a big eye opener for me. I'm like, wow, a lot of these conversations we have with others are kind of like hostage conversations. Like, what do they really contribute when so much is fluff? Like, just keep it streamlined. That's one good thing.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. And aside from being able to say or recognizing that you can say no, which I know I keep running back to because that's like my big thing, is also just recognizing that you, again, you're more than your career from a workplace standpoint. So at the end of the day, if your job is 9 to 5, try not to let your job follow you home. Like, whether you do like I do, which is probably another TMI moment. Like, if I have really bad days, because I'm sure we all have them, I know that I do. Try to find something to do that's cathartic. Whether it's like what I do, I scream at my steering wheel at stop signs or red lights. I actually get an odd joy of like having people watch me as I'm like shaking my steering wheel, screaming. Anything that you can do to decompress so that doesn't leach into other aspects of your life will also be huge. But that goes both ways. Don't take your private life to work with you, because your work life should stay at work and your private life should stay at home. And if you are by any means Facebook, Instagram friends, or anything with your coworkers, unless you consider them dear friends, cut it. That's also something that I've just decided to really do, but have a good separation of those things. I think that'll make you feel better as time goes on too.
Streaming has been super cathartic for me over quarantine, but also causes me major anxiety that I'm like not doing it well. Double-edged sword, but that's my cathartic activity right now. Boba, I feel that, my dude. That's like literally, that's what streaming has been for me too. Do you have any advice for respectfully setting up and sticking to boundaries at work?
So the best advice that I can give, and I know it's the scariest part about the whole process, frankly, is mustering the courage to have the conversation. So whether that is with a direct superior, owner, or anything along those lines, I work best putting my thoughts down on paper. So I am not the type to just typically kick down a door and be like, these are my demands, or this is what I want. I have to kind of have an initial game plan. And I would say that that's from my own anxiety. I like to overthink to know what could happen, which I know isn't always healthy, but it's my mental process. I like to start with an email, so I have a more formulated idea of where I am at this point, what my expectations are, and hopefully how I can help get there. I find that if you are able to bring some of the necessary solutions to the table, so it takes some of the workload or that process off of the employer, as crazy as that may sound, you typically have a better odd of setting that up. I will also say that most employers are a little bit more understanding as long as you, again, are honest and forthright. Not having the conversation and not expressing how you're feeling while you're in the workplace, if anything, is just going to make things compound more readily. So at the end of the day, going home and being like, well, today sucked because I did too much. Okay, well, did you have the conversation with who you were working with to talk about either limiting some of that workload or getting more of the workload, depending on how you're feeling about it? Because if not, to put bluntly, you become part of that problem. You help foster that type of workplace mismanagement. I am always having conversations with my boss, and frankly, I have one that needs to come up shortly, so I'm drafting that email later today. But I always try to be open and honest. And another favorite thing that I'm often saying when I'm at work is either I don't have the bandwidth to handle this, or turning it around and saying, I already have this, that, and this, or you've already given me this to accomplish. Is there another well-suited individual who can handle this too? So recognize that you see the work, but throw back on them. Hey, you've already given me this, and I can only do so much too. What needs prioritizing here? That way you don't feel like you're drowning. And Boba, no worries. I am a lead optician, so I do everything pertaining to glasses. So I have a very forward-facing job as far as the public right now. I've not had any, I would say, appropriate downtime from COVID. We've been moving and going the whole time. So things can get a little crazy. It's not just putting on glasses, but again, like everyone else, we make the best of what we can.
Also, what would you like people to know about your job that you think most people do not know or realize?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's tricky too. So I would say the thing that most people don't realize about what we do is, again, we as opticians are not just number crunchers. So when I first joined the optical world, or rather before I joined the optical world, I was just under the impression that whoever I sat down that I was purchasing glasses with was just hitting numbers, putting in my insurance, and telling me the final figures. There is a lot of science that goes on when it comes to glasses, literally down to from lens style and overall shape. Of course, how it's fitting on your face and making sure that you look presentable, that's one aspect. But a good optician, which I'm going to pat myself on the back for, should always have a conversation with the patient. I need to know how you're wearing your glasses. Are you actively wearing them? Like, if you're coming in and you're complaining about headaches and the doctor's like, hey, you need to wear these all the time. Are you actually wearing them all the time? Are you going to get your money's worth out of what you're getting? And understanding what you do throughout your day better helps me as far as knowing what I need to put into that package to make sure that you are seeing correctly, and that I'm not further adding to any type of eye strain that you may be having. On that note, I will also say that I respect that there are really accessible options for things like Warby Parker and Zenni Optical, and I will never tell you not to shop online, because you can get great deals that way. But I will also tell you, naturally, shop small if you can help it. So a lot of those online companies, of course, are still just another big retailer. And I love the mission behind Warby Parker as far as like making things accessible so no one is ever without glasses who needs them. But still have a conversation if you can with a private practice, just to make sure that, one, we're keeping your eye health good, because that's my primary goal, is making sure that you don't end up with eye disease. If you don't buy from me, that's fine. I am not commissioned, but knowing that I have made you a better consumer for when you go to buy something, to me is like a TikTok reference, but it's like, that's the macaroni with the chicken strips for me. Like that's the best thing I can help somebody do, is being like, oh, Tim did such a great job that I now know what I'm looking for, and I can do this myself. Perfect. I can die happy. Ari, I will definitely hook you up. The one thing I love doing, which again is to me a lost trade with opticians, I'm going to take you outside, because here in Maryland, like we still have to have masks on. I know every state's a little different, but I take you outside so you can take your mask off, and I'm going to look at you. I'm going to look at every part of your face, which sounds awkward at first, but like I put you down. I put candles next to you. No, makes it feel like a dinner. But I'm going to evaluate your face shape. I'm going to take a look to see like where your hairline technically starts or ends, if your ears are crooked, how large the bridge of your nose is, so I know if I need to work with a plastic or a metal frame, and of course eye placement. Like all super technical, but like nerdy things that really like get me going with my job. And then we're going to talk colors, and yes, absolutely. Please don't look at me that closely. No, I'm gonna. What field in the optical world do you think receives less credit than it deserves? Ooh, that's tricky. I would, honestly, I would probably say optometrists themselves. So those are like the actual doctors who are doing the eye exams. A lot of people don't come to doctors of optometry. They want to go to like an actual medical eye doctor, which is called an ophthalmologist, because they think that they receive better care. And I won't say that they receive better care. Like, we do a great job for being doctors of optometry. We just can't treat certain diagnoses. So like we're going to give you the best care that you can receive. You're going to have a great prescription. But if you do have like a larger eye disease that's going to impact you, obviously we can't do the surgery there. But we're going to make sure that through our connections that you're getting the best service outside of us. So I feel like we often get looked over because like we're not going to schedule you to do like LASIK with us. But I'm not commissioned, but I'm genuinely there to make sure that I'm getting you the best that makes sense for you. So I make what I feel to be decent money for the work that I do. But at the end of the day, I'm not profiting off of what you decide to buy with me. And I think that also makes the biggest difference. If you walk into an office and you feel like you're walking into like a car dealership, run, because it's not going to help you. Do I have any random glasses tips for people shopping for themselves and considering brands? The major shopping tips that I can say, I'll flip this around. If you know that you are a designer brand wearer, like you will wear nothing but Ray-Ban and Gucci, I still advise going to a private practice if you can help it. Not necessarily from a cost standpoint, but being able to sit down with someone who can overall just size you up and help you find something will be perfect. But I would still consider online avenues, but make sure they're coming from a trusted retail source. Like, I know again that there are companies like I Buy Direct where you can still get good designer frames at really cheap margins. So if cost is your biggest deciding factor, you can still get things cheap online that you won't sacrifice quality for. As much as, again, as I love things like Warby Parker for those who are shorter on funds, and this is going to get slightly nerdy, but a lot of their frames are made with what's called a cold-injected Xyle, which is a type of plastic that makes it to where, with time, it becomes brittle very quickly. So while you are paying for it to be cheaper out of pocket, you unfortunately are getting cheaper product in the long run. So if you are hard with your glasses and you tend to be rougher, they're going to break more readily. So you're paying less up front and it sounds good on paper, but you end up paying more in the long run as far as repairs and replacements. So sometimes spending a little bit more as far as like the whole capitalist dream ends up helping you longer by not having to dish things out later in life. And brands, this takes a little bit more research as far as finding what's good. I honestly have become a designer snob, and it's just because I stand by the workmanship. One thing that I would always tell you, and this is Denmark-based, my two favorite brands are Pro Design, which I'm actually wearing right now. Super nerdy again, but the frame is made out of what's called a cotton acetate. So this, with time here in the bridge, actually will mold more to your nose so they don't slip. Mine is still in that molding process, which is why you see me pushing them up a little bit. But to rep a German brand too, Cazal. Solid construction, German made. It's very 80s vibey and very geometric, so it's more of a statement piece eyewear. But like if you want like a fun, flashy but functional pair, look them up. I'll write their names in here. Pro Design and Cazal.
I love you.